So I was sick on last Tuesday, so I missed the class. So I just plan to have a makeup class on Monday, the next coming Monday. So I just try to check the time and available room. So after the break, so I will inform you where, when we are going to have a replacement class next week. So, so we just finalized the business ethics, and then we are going to talk about, say, how the companies actually deal with the external stakeholders, mostly customers and the governments. I think we understand what's the stakeholders, among which I think the customers also governments are two major stakeholder group members. Of course, competitors are also very important as your stakeholders and shareholder as well. However, competitor part and shareholder parts, I think you may be more study in much more in depth in your, say, third or fourth year about like how to analyze your competitor, how to react to competitors, and so on. So just talk about then what's the relationship with government and companies, and also what's the relationship with customers and companies. So we are going to talk about that one. So before we doing that, just try to finalize business ethics, right? We talked about a lot of ethical dilemma. So corporate social responsibility and ethical corporate business ethics are pretty much different concepts. Right? Corporate social responsibility means like companies' behavior should be responsible for all stakeholders. So in that sense, nowadays we can clearly able to define what is responsible behavior, right? So we now have a clear guideline of what CSR is. However, in ethics, especially corporate ethics, no clear definitions of ethics are actually we have, right? Because especially when you think about corporate ethics, actually different countries, different market actually are using that term wide, pretty much open way. So ethics in business in this country, or ethics in that country, other country may all vary widely a lot. So that's where actually you start to have your, say, business ethical dilemma, right? What you are doing wrong or right in your country may not be right or wrong in other countries. So what are you going to do in that different context and situation of your business environment? So that's the point. Especially like human rights issue, corruption issue, also the employment practice issue. Every country, especially developed country and developing country and far less developed country, does have all different ideas on that issues. So when you are doing business in all those different countries, what kind of rules and guidelines you are going to follow? So that is actually the concern in your company's business ethics. And that's where actually you should solve the ethical dilemma of your business. So we have to here open this, yeah, business ethics. Again, let's look at like your employment practice, right? In Indian market, we use this example quite often. In India, like probably hiring teenage boys and girls are pretty much common, but not allowed in any other countries. So if you are running business in Indian market for Indian customers, are you going to hire teenage boys and girls in India? So what about the minimum wage? Your country's minimum wage and Indian minimum wages are all different. So which standard you are going to use? Like we used Nike case, right? Nike, the shoemakers actually use strongly criticize of the company's child labor abuse. Like teenage boys actually make the shoes in Bangladesh by paying about like 3 cents per hour, for instance, which is quite not making sense according to our living standard. But actually, that's what Nike did for its manufacturing in Bangladesh. So, is it really ethically right? It is purely like child labor abuse, simply paying 3 cents per hour for making shoes. Not right. However, from the Bangladesh, very common employment practice, nothing wrong there. So even though the Nike didn't really violate any human right or labor practice in that Bangladesh country's context, the company received strong criticism, boycotts. So that's why the company has lost lots of image, reputation, and so on. So the question is, every country does have a different, say, ethical standards, on which business practice should be built. Then, so you as a manager of international firms, what should be your, say, guideline of your international business practice ethically in many different countries? As I mentioned, countries that have all different ethical standard. So even though that different ethical standard condition, what is like kind of your, say, ethical standard? What should be your ethical standard that can be used any country, any place? That is the question. So no matter what, where you are operating your business, you use a firm, how can I say, you should have a very strong, say, your own guideline, right? That determine your company's, say, business ethical practice. So I think probably these 5, I think, factors. If you are the manager of international organization firms, certainly help you to solve a ethical dilemma in different countries for your international operations. Right? First, so this is just a guideline for you, right? So stick to these rules, certainly you are able to solve ethical dilemma, business ethical dilemma. The first one is you should be right at the beginning by hiring the right person. So that's why you should hire right person at the beginning. Right? If you hire like ethically problem employees or person, probably you may have some problem with that person. Right? So you should choose the right person when you actually hire as your employees. So actually this day, if you say apply for the companies, what do? You apply, you submit your CV, resume, cover letter, and so on. So the company actually selects some of the best candidate out of their say applicants, and then the selected applicants actually go to like assessment center, kind of taking exam made by the companies. So that exam, some people in Korea we call this like 입사시험, right? So the exam actually not only calculating your numerical ability, problem solving ability, but on the other hand, that exam actually tests your ethical standard, your, say, level of ethics, what kind of morality you actually have, right? So I know there are a lot of students here preparing that company entrance exam, but one important dimension of that exam is actually test your morality and ethical, say, standard of individual employees. That's actually reflect how it is important to hire and even promote when they actually selecting people for the firms. So hiring the right person ethically and morally is quite important. Another one is you should have a very good organizational culture. So we always talk about like BP. I mean, the textbook actually quite often I use the example of BP as a kind of a symbol of having very strong ethical standard of the business. We know that the BP is very globalized firms, right? They actually run everywhere, but you can see their kind of a consistency of the operation, right? Whether they are operating in a developed country or developing country, wherever they are actually working, they just follow their code of conduct of the firms, right? So that is part of the firm's culture, right? They value their own designed ethical behavior. So you should have a very good corporate culture where your people, your staff and employees are all put the highest value on ethical behaviors, regardless of place of your working. And also, as you see here, the leaders' roles are also very important, right? The leader should be able to articulate, not only articulate the rhetoric of ethical behaviors, rather than just saying, this is ethical behavior or that is not ethical behavior. So saying is sometimes quite simpler than just doing. So rather than just saying something rhetorically, the leader of the firm should show that what is ethical behavior in quite a consistent manner, right? Like the Enron case, the top management already corrupted, right? We see the example here, the Enron, the oil company, the bankrupt companies, the CEO, the top management of the firms actually used the private jets of the firms for his daughter's graduation ceremony. So is it right or wrong? Wrong, right? So the top already corrupted in some way. So which actually not good for making right organizational culture. So leader saying is just nothing, right? Rather than saying something, they have to show something, demonstrate something of what is ethical behavior. And also another quite important thing is the company should clearly design a very right decision-making process. All of the firms should decide a lot of issues like investment, hiring, withdrawing, many kinds of decision-making the company do every moment. So when the firm decides something, there should be some kind of a process, right? By asking several questions, the company ends up with some decision at the end. But what here we try to say here is that the company should add some ethical questions, right? By doing this or that, is it really good for, is it ethically right or wrong? So you should ask, right? Your decision is impacting others ethically right or wrong. So that kind of you have to keep asking that ethical question for your company's profit-making, decision-making process, right? So ethical questions should add up every different kinds of decision-making process. But this is quite important because lots of companies not clearly having this kind of ethical decision-making process, right? They never ask whether a particular decision or behavior really relevant to the code of ethical behavior of the firms. So that's why some of the leading firms, as I mentioned like previously, in our previous slide, this one. Texas Instrument is one of the IT company USA. So this is a Texas Instruments ethical question. So whenever the company makes this decision, right, investment, hiring people or whatever, they use this questionnaire together. Right? So whatever their action there is, that action is ethically legal. The action is legal or comply with the value of the firm, and also do you really feel good or bad for that behavior or decision and so on. So what decision making you go through, you have to also ask the same question upon the company's ethical decision, ethical questions. If these questions end up with no or don't know, then you have to think twice. A lot of global firms that have their own, say here, ethical question guideline. Cheers, one of the retail firms in USA also does have a strong their own question, ethical questions. So the ethical question also use any kinds of companies questions. Is it legal, or is it really shared with the company's belief, policy? Is it fair, and so on. So again, previously, company never ask this kind of ethical questions for any kinds of decision making. So things pretty much changed this day. So by putting that question into the system of decision making process of the firm, a lot of benefit actually company would get, like protecting not only the company behave ethically, but also it protect the firms from any legal violation. If you are doing wrong, some activists actually attack you, right? So which actually costs your business. So you can prevent that kind of a cost by putting that question into your decision making process. And this day, one of the company's strategy for promoting more the ethical behavior, to solve the problem of ethical dilemma, the company set up a new position like ethical officer. So the ethical officer, people in the position actually monitoring all kinds of organizations' decision making, behavior, investment, and so on, and judge whether that is right or wrong, or do harm or benefit for the firm in the future. So that kind of a job, officer's job, actually try to ensure all of the activity of the firms are within the boundary of ethical's code of conduct. And moral courage, which is also very important. Like Enron crisis, for instance. We just keep using the Enron crisis. The oil company make a fake financial statement, right? They made a huge loss, but they made a statement, financial statement, saying they made a lot of money, which is a crime, right? And that fake statement actually submit to the investors, publicized and so on, which is another huge crime. But nobody knew. But how come this crime actually became public? Because somebody in the company tell the truth, right? it was very courageous kind of a behavior. I think the secretary of the CEO saw what the fake financial statement making and companies forgery paper documentation process, and that the secretary cannot take that wrongdoing. Probably she may be a very conscious man or lady, so she go out to the mass media and tell the truth about what is going on and what's wrong with the companies. So that's what I call a whistleblower, right? Somebody telling the truth. That somebody is somebody who inside the organization, not really outside the organization. So say, like, if you hear as a classmate, notice something that your other classmates are doing wrong, then you may probably telling that what you see into, say, university, for instance, right? So that is whistleblower, right? In other countries, the whistleblowers are really, really well protected by law. So if you manifest something honestly for the wrong behavior of your organizations, and the say USA or other Western country, you call a whistleblower and you are safely protected by law. So that promotes actually more people to telling the truth about what's going on. But unfortunately, not really in Korea, a strongly designed, not really a good designed whistleblower system here. So if you're telling the truth, probably you may receive some kind of a backlash from your organization. So that's why not many people try to tell the truth in Korea. Institution, for instance, in Korea should protect somebody who tells the truth. I'm afraid to say that we are not that advanced in that sense in protecting the whistleblower, but we are moving forward. But the point here is that we should have a moral courage. If you witness a wrong things, something going on wrong, then you should tell the truth. And your manifestation should be protected. So, classroom performance, right? So, multinational companies are concerning so what is the answer? Multinational companies are concerned with ethics. About what? Except. So when you say ethical dilemma, right, from the international business context, about what kind of ethical dilemma mostly companies suffer? Except what? If you know the answer, I'll give you an A. So you are free from final exam, really? So what's the answer here? D. Okay. That's an exercise, okay? The real question is next, okay? This one. Which of the following does not contribute to the unethical behavior by manager? What's the answer? Anyone? C? A. Who D? B? Anyone? B. What? D. Who said D? D. Right answer. Right, D. Right. So I think you just warm up, right? So another exercise question here. So this is finally the question, right? Which philosophy claims that companies home? So which one is the right answer here? What? A? Which one is A? Cultural relativism, right? You should follow your home country's rule for your ethical decision or under the situation of ethical dilemma. So you must follow your home country's rule. Wherever you are going, you just follow Korean way. So what's the what theory? Who argued this one? What? C? Friedman? The what? B? B, yeah, B is answer. Okay, so raise your hand. Who said B? B. Okay. Okay. So somebody here cheat on me. So this is really the final questions. Your grade determined by these questions. A company's formal statement of ethical priorities called what? B. B. So A. So okay. Yeah. Yeah. What? So you are free from your final exam. So I said you are free from final exam, so you don't need to take final exam. But I don't know.
So you're saying that we don't need to take it.
So you don't need to. What? You don't need to take final exam, right? But I'm not sure what grade you will get. Okay. So let's look at then the government and customers. We know what stakeholders, right? But we are talking about today like external stakeholders, customers, competitors, employee. No. The government certainly the external stakeholder. So an activist, social activist, maybe also the external stakeholders. So. A lot important many stakeholders outside the organization, but we are particularly looking at the government, right? I think you have already learned about what governments actually do for the society, government, I mean the company and people and so on. So we're just briefly talking about that one, the role of the government. Especially on business, right? The role of the government on business, and also what kind of a tool they may have to control, promote, encourage, or sometimes discourage the behavior of companies. So we are going to talk about that one today. And also customers, right? What's the relationship with the customers and the companies? Of course, your product, service provided to the customers. So you may think that customers are some kind of where you're actually sourcing your profit. Right? But customer does have more than that, more meaning than that. So we talk about the relationship with customers and the companies. Let's have a look at government first, right? So what government actually do for the companies? So what company should do or try to do to the government in response? So what kind of interaction is actually going on between government, company? So what kind of also government regulation the company, what kind of regulation the government has over the companies, which is also very important. So that's kind of like the contextual relationship with the government and the company, which we are going to talk about here. So again, what's the government try to do to the companies? What's the role of the government? Especially if you look at like free market economy, we know what it is, right? The government tried to less involve in all kinds of business activity, right? Like the textbook clearly explained, like Reagan, the time of the President Reagan, somewhere in 1980s, or the time in President Bush, the father of George W. Bush, the ex-president, former president of USA. If you the economic mechanism of USA at the time, it was pretty much like free market economy, like. Especially the American case, Americans don't like the involvement of government to the companies' business activities. So they favor free market economy mechanism, free market mechanism. However, things changed, right? So free market mechanism means simply the government not really try to give less regulation, plan, ideas over what company is doing, right? It's the job of the company. So the government try to stay away from the area of the companies or business. But President Bill Clinton, where 1990s, mid-1990s, the global economy we can say kind of a transform, right? I remember the internet, my email first introduced 1995. So all of the students actually received email account, and professor asked students to submit say assignment through email. So before then, students normally print out the paper. I mean, every the university does have a printing center there. So just go there. There's a long queue, and students just wait there and print out their term paper and then submit the paper all the time. That's how you submit the paper. However, by the introduction of the email, so you don't need to submit the paper. Just send it through email. That system, I remember, first introduced 1996. Amazing invention at the time, right? How come? So you don't need to anyway see the professor to submit your paper. Just send it through email. That's because of the Clinton government's nationwide grand plan of information superhighway, right? So the government's idea was that try to promote IT, internet-based economy. So that kind of idea to promote economy in this or that direction, that is kind of a government intervention. I mean, yeah, government intervention. So kind of a industrial policy, right? So before Bill Clinton, no such kind of seriously government like industrial policy that changed or transformed the whole economy. I think in that sense, the information highway of the Bill Clinton regime really changed the whole system of the economic system of USA. So because of the information superhighway policy, a lot of IT company emerged in USA, right? Changed structure of the industry. New companies emerged. Old companies just disappeared, gone. So transformation, right? Which means government policy change impact a lot to the business, right? So the point is it really necessary for a government to intervening the business area, business operation, company's behavior? Or some people say that the government strongly involved in company's behavior, action, business, and so on. But some other people say that government should stay away from the business area. That's the job of the business. So two different actually arguments there. But before there goes a strong argument between two different view, see what happened now. Do we going for more government intervention or less government intervention? More government intervention, actually. Just look Korea here. Because of the September 11, Lehman Brothers crisis, right? Asian market, Asian crisis, financial crisis. Because of the crisis of everywhere in global market, simply the government wake up. Without doing something, the global economy may be going into hell or something like that. So that's why, because of that frequent global economic crisis, government changed their mind and started intervening a lot in many different areas. So this is nowadays pretty much the time of lots of government intervention. So what kind of intervention the government do use? So we are going to talk about that one. So fundamentally, the government's roles are this one. Right? They make the rule of the game for business, right? A lot of companies compete each other, right? But they are not really competing arbitrarily. There certainly exist kind of a rules, right? In terms of pricing, in terms of promotion, in terms of, say, supplying, giving and taking each other, between business partners. Every activity, transaction, there is kind of a rules, right? If you violate the rules, you should pay fine, penalties, right? So the government decide the rule of that game. And another important thing is that governments are very strong customer of the company, right? You know what I'm saying, right? The government actually, just like consumer, government need house, building, they need facility, they need so government actually need a lot of materials, resource, and so on. So who provide that one? From the companies. But unlike other typical customers, the governments are really, really huge customers, right? Once they buy something, their volumes are so big and huge. Right? Because of that huge purchasing power, the government does have a strong bargaining power as well. They are the customer to the company, but also they are the helper to the firms. If you are, what's going on today, this day, to many Korean companies, especially in shipbuilding, construction companies in Korea. All of them used to be the major Korean, say, companies, industry, like global top. But all of them are under the financial problems, right, because of the recession. So government helped them with money. So governments are the subsidizer to many business. And also a lot of 공기업 there, a lot of government-run owned companies. So governments are customer on one hand, money lender on the other hand, but also they are actually the manager. They are actually the company owners. They design the economic growth. They make the plan of money spending, how, where, when, kind of money spending, kind of planning they actually make. So in that sense, they are the financier. And again, government protect us if the business company exploiting us. So the government's role to the business are not really negligible. Their roles are really huge. So in that sense, what are the major concern of the government over the companies? So like Korean government, for instance, we have a huge companies like Samsung, LG, POSCO, and many companies. So what kind of a concern actually the government has over these firms? If you are, say, the head of Korean major governments, so when you're looking at Korean major firms, what kind of concern you have? That's the question. First question is how much autonomy you are trying to give to these firms, right? Are you going to let them do whatever they want, or are you giving them kind of a limitation for their behavior? So how much autonomy you are going to give to these firms? That's quite a very important your consideration and concern. Another question is, more important question is, as you see here, the governments are also, on one hand, owner of the companies, right? 공기업, government actually also run the firms. Also, government also the buyer. They buy. They are huge customers. So the concern of the government is that which one the government should do and which one let the company do. So as I told you, the government also run the companies, right? It is related to the privatization issues, right? Is it better for you as a government to do that behavior or let firms, private firms, to do that job? So which one is better for doing that job? Let's say you are making cars, right? It's better for you to make the cars or let, say, car companies make the cars. So which one is better for the country? So that's another very critical questions. So from the government point of view, like determining the boundaries between government job and company's job. Like water supply, everybody need water. So government provide the water to the people or let water company provide the water to people. So which one is better? There is a strength and weakness. There is a pros and cons for each option. So you have to decide that one. So let's talk about this one after the break. So Monday, May 30, room 251, the class, the room that our Wednesday class actually, Tuesday class actually held. I will do the makeup class on Monday. So I will give you actually send you the letter notice on this one. Monday from 5 to 6, just strictly 1 hour of makeup class on Monday, next Monday, okay? So, so that's the major concern of the government over the companies and business. But the government's concern is not really easy to solve because there's a kind of a clash all the times between what government believe versus what company believe, right? Like, for instance, as you see here, two institutions, business, company, and government does have a different belief. Because of that belief difference, there is actually ethical clash. Like ethics, we talked about company's ethics previously, but that company's ethics are pretty much individualized ethics. Every company does have different their own ethical standards. We talked about like BP as a kind of a good standard of business ethics, but actually other good company also might have their own different ethics in business. So business ethics are pretty much individualized, designed ethics, while the government ethics are pretty much collective ethics, which actually try to satisfy all players in the market. And also, business companies admit self-interest, meaning profit maximization of your company's organization. So a profit-seeking pursuit of profit is no problem. However, from the government perspective, rather than individual, say, profit is profit, the more collective interests are actually located above the individual profit and, say, interest. So which interest actually you put first ahead. So that's where actually two institutions does have different idea. And business wants a lot more freedom, less obligation, while governments want more obligation, less individual freedom. It's quite different, obviously. And business fundamentally, I think these are pretty much two radically where there exists a huge gap. Like the company's perspective, inequality is quite natural, so we should admit the difference in capability, ability. So inequality is not really a big deal. But government perspective showing that even though all players may be not really equal, however, it is actually the job of the government to equalizing them to some extent. So that's why the government pretty much put much emphasis on the equality of individuals. So as you see here, two institutions actually radically different beliefs. So that's why there's a kind of a clash. So because of that difference, some people say that like government's trying to do a lot, so they should do less. But on the other hand, some people say that government should do more. Like the political party of Korea here, for instance, we have some major political parties. So they have a kind of a different political ideology, but actually where they are different, actually pretty much we can have an idea from this kind of different belief, right? One party more emphasizing kind of equality, and the other party try to put more value on like inequality of the individual difference. It's quite natural things. Free market or more government-controlled market and so on. So actually different belief actually always cause some clash and conflict. So this is how business, government, and public interacting each other. Right? The company, business actually lobbying a lot to government to make the regulation more favorable to the firm's business. On the other hand, the government also try to control the business companies by issuing new regulation, new forms of, or sometimes persuasion and so on. So this picture just shows how three institutional players are actually interacting each other. So we can see not really no one institution clearly dominating a particular interaction. So they are just like interconnected, impacting each other, giving and taking something. So before we talking about, say, the impact of government on the company and business, just let's look at what kind of impact of the government can have on the companies and business. As you see here, government does have a two-way to give the impact to your business or company by using strong doctrine, discipline, rules, regulation on one hand, or by creating some regime or system mechanisms. So we can say a regulatory way of, say, business impact, or on the other hand, non-regulatory way of business impact. So that's actually two tools of the government that can be impacting the companies and business. Let's talk about the non-regulatory method of the government. So even though the government do not introduce like rules, law, regulation, the government anyway impacting the company's behavior. So that's what non-regulatory influence on the companies, like industrial policy and privatization. So two major tools of the government. So the firms actually receiving huge impact influenced by these two. So like industrial policy is like kind of a strategic effort of the government. The strategic effort, right? As I told you, strategic effort. Strategic effort means a kind of a planned effort, right? Planned, calculated effort to encourage or promote, say, or developed or grow of part of the economy or all of the economy. So that's what I call it the industrial policy. While the privatization simply means that the governments hand over their roles to the private companies. So that's the privatization. So if you are the say company owners or the real manager, then you have to closely look at what kind of industrial policy you have, the movement of privatization as well, especially the privatization. So it impact your market structure. So by privatization, your structure simply change. You have new, sometimes competitors with a totally new power, which impact your company's behavior, strategy, action. So I think the industrial policies is I think the foremost important non-regulatory action of the governments. So non-regulatory action, industrial policy, is like what kind of a role the government try to do. So what role the government try to do in the market. So that is actually industrial policy. So again, industrial policy, I just cannot simply say, there's a lot of different kinds of industrial policy, right? As I say, kind of a strategic, like strategic effort, not action, effort, strategic effort of government to encourage, promote, develop, grow the economy. So that's the industrial policy. See, like Korean firm, as I mentioned like earlier, Korean construction sectors, a lot of firms in construction sector, shipbuilding sectors, that is now under now in trouble financially. So so far, whenever Korean companies are in trouble, the government gave financial subsidies. That's I think the typical Korean government industrial policy. If you are big firms, if you are in trouble, government help you. Because if you collapse, the whole economy may be stopped. So government don't like it. So a very typical industrial policy of government, Korean government, was simply providing bailout, like helping money for financially troubled firms. But many people criticize that like Korea kind of government helped too much for companies in trouble. Right? So if companies in trouble, then just let them die away, right, for the efficiency of the market. If you just keep helping bad companies, then the good companies may be in disadvantage situation, right? You should help, as a government, you should help good company, right? Bad company, you should let them go. But what happened so far was that you should sometimes, government help problem companies. So, however, like you can see a lot of very similar examples even in USA. Like a lot of USA major giants, like GE, for instance, or Chrysler, for instance, so which used to be the leading Korean, the American firms, experienced like financial trouble, and saved by the government money, right? Government bailout. So that kind of government help is kind of industrial policy. So there is an argument: is it really good to help those company in trouble, or is it really bad to help those companies in trouble? Regarding the industrial policy, regarding the government's role to help promote, say, also encourage company, there is a strong criticism. Some people say that you should not do too much for that one, on one hand. But on the other hand, some people say that yeah, we need help. We need to help companies, especially big companies, if they are in trouble. So that's what we mean here. Argument for industrial policy and argument against in industrial policy. So if you take like international business, I think in your second year, probably you will be dealing with these kind of things, right? In your opinion, what is your ideas? Which one is better? Which one is right? Is it really a good idea to help a company in trouble, or is it really not a good idea to help company in trouble? So which one do you think a better one for the economy and so on? Not helping is better. Why? So you are more like this side. Okay, yeah. So yeah, that's I think quite correct. Is there anyone here support this one then? Is it really necessary to help company in trouble? So yeah, we can talk. Yeah.
Maybe in short run, if the government supports company expansion, they might see a massive decline in their budget because they have to help the company with money they have, and they have a limited amount of resources. But I feel like in the long run, because company like Samsung, everybody's saying it's like globalized and it's no longer a Korean company. But honestly, I disagree because headquarters is still in Korea and they still pay massive taxation to the government. But I feel like in the long run, if the government saves a company, economically it makes more sense. And also it goes back to the role of the government. Those are the Korean people working in the company. If the company collapsed, there's like 100,000 unemployed people now. And if you think about it, the government now has to fund those people with the social security fund that they are saving the company. So either way, there's going to be this spending. Why not just save the company?
So you said better for not helping.
I feel like it's better to help the company. That's why.
Ah, yeah. So you better to help company, right? So, I mean, argument for, right? Okay. I think yeah, good point. So, like a lot of debate on this issue, especially in international business. So, yeah, we talk about this one on Monday, right? And just try to finish this government role, and then go move to the customer's role.